The brown-toothed fort rose out of the plateau like a cracked molar left in a giant jaw. I saw it first as a heat smear, then as mud brick and timber, then as a gate that wanted names, seals, and boredom. I gave it all three. Behind my heart, the ember sat banked from a 2-heartbeat sip taken at the leaning marker an hour back. Not full, never full. Second law rode my ribs like a quiet passenger. Grey riders were still a day or more behind if Shirin's gossip and my goat tracks had done their work. If they had not, boredom would have to do what distance failed to do. The watchman was younger than the one at Vahram's fort and more eager to prove he could smell trouble. He pinched my jaw, checked my lips, peered at the nail-wrapped strap as if iron itself were a confession. Storm 3 days west, I said. Road ate my pace, seals dry. He grunted the way men grunt when they have orders without understanding, and waved me into the yard. Inside smelled of horse piss, barley mash, and hot dust. A signal mirror on the south tower flashed once toward some far ridge, a bright wink that made the hollow lift its head like a hound hearing kitchen noise. I looked at my sandals until the urge passed. Polished bronze throws blame as easy as light. Working note under the 5th law, still not clean enough to number. I delivered to a clerk with ink on 3 fingers and no interest in my face. He checked seals, stamped a clay receipt, and shoved a return packet at me with a root scrap tied in red string. Eastern loop continues. Salt margin by dusk if your legs are honest. Stamp at the white cistern post. Do not die stupid. Yes, I said, which is the longest safe sentence in a fort yard. I bought water that tasted of goat and old rope, refilled both skins, and sat in the thin shade of a fodder stack to eat dates Shirin had pressed into my hand like a blessing she refused to name. Ordinary sweetness. Ordinary life as camouflage. The second stomach ignored the sugar and listened to the sun instead, a dull roar above the mud walls, clear and endless, hungry, clear sky. That was the true enemy and the true pantry. Storms were rare gifts and rare traps. Noon was every day, a white nail driven through the world, and I was learning to sip it without becoming the kind of stain captains write reports about. A runner I half knew limped past with a cracked sandal sole flapping. Temple dogs sniffed the west road, he muttered without slowing. Mixed-color men, paying for burn stories. I told him goat songs still sold better. He did not laugh. Fear had already bought his humor. I left before the eager watchman could invent a second inspection. The eastern track dropped through scrub that rattled like dry bones when the wind moved. Heat shimmer made the horizon breathe. I ran at a pace that looked like duty and felt like flight dressed in duty's clothes. At a saddle of rock I stopped, checked dust trails, found none that meant fresh horses, and tilted my face up. 2 heartbeats. Rope of noon pulled slow through the throat. The hollow stretched, warm, pleased, and I shut my mouth while copper still stayed out of my eyes. Stop while you can stop. The stop still felt like refusing wine, and I still refused. I tested nothing. No finger of heat into stone. Brown-tooth fort still sat in line of sight if someone on the tower loved staring. Pride wants monuments. Survival wants bare dirt and empty rumors. I ran on. By mid-afternoon, the salt margin showed as a pale scab on the land, flats where water had once argued with sun and lost. The air sharpened. My lips cracked wider. I wrapped a strip of cloth across my mouth, not for disguise, but for moisture, and to hide any black that heat might paint at the corners. Scrubbed red was safer than clean black. Painful convincing still beat true confession. A caravan crawled the margin's edge, wheels screaming, guards half asleep on swaying seats. One raised a hand, I raised mine and did not join them. Height on a wagon puts your face nearer sun and nearer eyes. Also, metal hardware sings to the hollow in a way I do not enjoy explaining even to myself. Third law. Never explain, not to merchants, not to myself out loud where scrub might carry echoes to the wrong ears. Near evening, the white cistern post appeared, a lime-washed lump beside a covered well. 2 soldiers diced on a blanket. A third slept with a fly on his eyelid. I stamped seals, traded a scrap of news about West Road dust for a ladle of water, and took the night slip they offered. Wall space inside if I wanted, scrub scrape outside if I valued fewer questions. I chose scrub scrape. Walls hold ears, ears feed grey riders. Under a thorn overhang I ate cold bread, drank and recited laws until the words matched my pulse. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. Avoid bright courtyards when hot. The last still a seed, not a number. Hoofbeats came after full dark, unhurried, 2 horses, voices low. Not the same pair from the western overhang, or the same and farther ranging than I liked. Oil and ash on the wind, priest adjacent, the grey compromise of men sent to look before they collar. They stopped at the cistern. A ladle clinked. A soldier answered questions in the bored rhythm of a man who had seen too many runners to remember one. Lean, fast, cracked lips, satchel scars. The silhouette pieces floated in the dark like moths. I became stone among stones. Ember banked so deep it might have been only memory. Knife loose in the wrap at my belt. Empty enough that if they dragged me into lamplight, I would be only a late post with bad breath and worse manners. They rode on east, which meant either they guessed my loop or they were combing every road until rumor thickened into a body. Either way, the brown-tooth fort had not hidden me. It had only stamped me and sent me deeper into clear sky that wanted to be eaten and would punish gluttony with the indifference of day. I did not sleep until their dust settled. Then I slept in pieces, counting the hours until noon would give me teeth again, and promising the hollow nothing it had not already earned under law. Morning on the salt margin is a knife without a handle. You hold it anyway because the alternative is standing still while the day chooses your shape. I left the thorn scrape before the cistern soldiers finished arguing over dice. The grey rider's tracks cut east along the official ribbon of road, 2 sets of hooves, confident spacing. I cut southeast on a goat braid that would cost me time and save me silhouette. Thorns wrote fresh lines on my calves. Ordinary blood, ordinary limp if anyone asked. Rostam's borrowed wisdom still fit. The return packet rode snug against my hip. Red string, white cistern stamp drying into the clay. Empire loves its little proofs that bodies moved when ordered. I was still a body that moved when ordered. That was not shame, that was cover. Clear sky piled overhead without a single useful cloud. The hollow noticed, of course it noticed. Hunger is a second sense once you have fed it lightning and taught it noon. I gave it nothing until the leaning salt marker, then 2 heartbeats, then stop. Warm weight settled. Copper stayed away. Good. A fisher camp squatted where a brackish cut crossed the flats. Nets dried on poles like flayed shadows. A woman mending cord looked up and measured me for threat, coin, or news. I bought dried fish with a copper and asked, mild as boiled grain, whether mixed color riders had passed offering pay for fire stories. Yesterday, she said. Wanted burns on mouths and black glass on roads. I told them the only fire out here is the sun, and it does not pay. They did not laugh. Men who do not laugh are already spending someone else's fear. I thanked her, ate the fish as I walked, and did not look back. Cheap truth from a stranger is worth more than free lies from a fort. By high morning, the goat braid rejoined a wider track where cart ruts remembered wet seasons. Dust rose behind me in a pale rope. Dust is a flag. I slowed, stepped onto stone ribs beside the ruts, and let the flag fall. Running is not only legs. Running is choosing what the land announces about you. At a broken milestone, I practiced aim the way a man checks a knife edge when no one watches. 3 pebbles on a ledge. Needle of heat, black dot, needle, black dot, needle, crack. The 3rd pebble split and stung my shin with a chip. I sat, breathed, refused the hollow's offer of more for 100 counts. Pain tutors without flattery. Appetite argues like a drunk uncle. I loved neither and needed both kept in their stools. A column of lesser messengers passed on tired horses, no blue cloth, just sweat and schedule. I stepped off and bowed my head. One sniffed, frowned, rode on. Forge smell where no forge stood. Schedules still saved lives they never meant to save. I unclenched hot fists on cool stone and waited until their dust belonged to someone else. The packet's red string itched against my mind. What did it carry? Orders, tax adjustments, a complaint about bandits, a note that grey riders were authorized to detain interesting runners. I did not open it. Breaking seals is how late posts become dead posts with ceremonies. Curiosity is a luxury for men who do not already hold lightning in a gut. Near noon, the sky went from hard to vicious. Shadows puddled under stones. Heat shimmer turned distant scrub into walking ghosts. I found a saddle with clean sightlines, no dust trail, one lizard in a crack, and sipped 4 heartbeats because the day felt like a weapon test already, and I wanted the store heavier than moderate. Mistake. Copper washed my vision in old coin tint. Ribs ached like a drum skin tuned by a cruel hand. Nausea rolled. I dropped to a knee, exhaled without release, and rode the wave until the horizon stopped tilting. Overfill is not poetry. Overfill is the pot telling the cook it will take him with the stew. I waited, counted, let the store settle from dangerous to heavy safe. Then I laughed once, short, because the lizard had fled, and even reptiles know when a man becomes the wrong neighbor. Lesson carved deeper. Texture of noon matters, but greed wears texture like a mask. Clear noon cuts. It does not ask permission to cut you back if you drink like a riot. I ran with the weight careful and low, a sealed coal, not a torch. Afternoon brought a fork. Left road toward a village with a bright well hood of polished metal. Right road toward longer scrub and a dry ford. I took the right without debate. Working note, bright bowls throw blame. Villages throw eyes. Eyes feed tablets. Tablets feed grey riders who already rode my former schedule like a comb. At the dry ford, I met tracks again. 2 horses turning in place, then heading back west a short run, then east once more, searching pattern, not hunting a deer, hunting a rumour with legs. I kicked my own prints into mess, laid a false scuff toward a useless sidewash, and crossed on stones that kept mud from holding clean story. Evening found me within sight of a low caravanserai wall, lamp dots already waking. I could buy wall space. I could also buy a night of questions from merchants who collect burn stories the way children collect bright stones. I camped short of the wall in a scrape that smelled of old sheep and older dust. Cold bread, skin water, laws in step rhythm until sleep. Near midnight, something large moved on the official road. Not 2 horses, a small train, wheels, a voice raised in the flat confidence of a man who believes seals make him immortal. I stayed dark, ember silent. The train passed toward the caravanserai and took its noise inside the walls. After silence returned, I allowed the smallest smile. Hunted is not caught. Receipts are not destinies. Dust forgets faster than tablets, and I was still teaching dust to forget me one scuffed print at a time. Dawn would bring another stamp, another chance to be boring, another hungry clear sky offering a feast I must take in sips. I touched my chest once. Ember answered, not master, not slave, partner with teeth. I can work with that, even when the partner wants the whole day poured down my throat before the first bird finishes its stupid song. Discipline is a word captains love and runners earn in blood and boredom. I woke to a sky already bleaching, the kind of clear that makes priests talk about clean fire and makes my hollow talk about breakfast. I did not eat sky at once. I ate bread. I drank water. I wrapped the strap nails though they were already wrapped. Ritual before appetite. Ritual is how I keep the newer self from eating the older one. The caravanserai gates opened with a scrape I heard from my sheep stink scrape. Smoke rose. Someone laughed. Ordinary morning machinery. I waited until a cluster of merchants took the road east in a loud knot, then drifted in their dust shadow without joining their talk. Being near people is not the same as being of them. Near is cover. Of them is inventory. At the first rise, I let them pull ahead and stopped in a bowl of stone the sun had not fully claimed. 2 heartbeats. Stop. The hollow sulked in the way heat sulks, which is to say it pressed warmth up my throat and asked for more like a child who has learned the shape of yes. I gave it 100 empty counts. Training the stomach matters as much as training the release. A tool that commands you is not a tool. I began the day's true work, sip discipline as if it were a route with markers. Landmark 1, cracked arch of an old aqueduct rib. 2 heartbeats, store, no release. Landmark 2, black basalt tooth beside the ruts. 2 heartbeats, store. Finger width test into the tooth's shadow side where only lizards would care. Black mark, no bloom, stop. Landmark 3, nothing human within sight. 4 heartbeats, slow, tasting texture. Clear noon was still climbing, not yet the white nail. The rope scraped less than yesterday. Practice was sanding the inside of the act. I stopped before copper. The stop felt cleaner, not easier. Cleaner is enough. I wrote nothing in dirt. Pride wants letters. Survival wants scuff marks that mean weather. A boy herding goats called from a slope. You the late post. My uncle says late posts bring storms. I told him late posts bring mail and sore feet. He wanted lightning stories. I sold him a dull one about rain and a stupid sandal, then bought his silence with a date and a warning that men in mixed colors paid for lies that got runners killed. He nodded with the solemn greed of the young and drove his goats over my tracks as if I had asked. Children can be allies when you pay them in fruit and respect. By true noon, the sky was a lid of white iron. I chose a saddle, checked trails, and did the dangerous lesson on purpose. Sip, hold, move, sip, hold, move, never while the feet wandered. Walking and opening the throat had nearly walked me off a road once. I would not gift gravity a second chance. Heavy safe. That was the target. Not invincible, not empty. A weight I could run under for hours without the mind going slow. Slow men with dangerous guts are temple dreams. I ran loops on a flat spur until sweat salted my eyes and the store stayed even. No kick into the throat, no copper tide. Balance was the real sip of noon, not the light, the stopping, not the feast, the portion. Release practice came after, aimed at a row of dry thistle stalks, needles, thin black ends, no bloom. Wind pushed one needle sideways and scorched dirt I had not chosen. I cursed, corrected, and did it again until wind became part of the math instead of an excuse. Aim is not purity. Aim is accounting. A rider appeared far west, a single speck, not 2. Could be anyone. Could be a split search. I dropped behind the spur, banked heat deeper, and became a man checking his sandal lace for a long time. When I looked again, the speck had angled north toward the village with the bright well hood. Good. Bright things attract the wrong moths. I went east alone. Afternoon thinned the worst edge of the heat without offering cloud. The hollow complained in dull pulses. I named the complaint out loud once, soft. You are not the sky. You are a pocket. Pockets do not steer boots. Then I felt ridiculous and grateful. Ridiculous keeps you human. Grateful keeps you from pretending the pocket cannot kill you. Near a salt vein marker, I met Shirin coming the other way, limp sharper than before, grin thinner. She did not stop walking until our shoulders nearly matched. Temple Grey is thick on the west loop, she said. They have a charcoal man who reads ash like script. Do not be interesting. Do not be empty either, if empty makes you slow. She tossed me 2 dates. I tossed her a copper she refused. Debt between runners is a rope. Sometimes you hold it. Sometimes you let it lie slack. Any name on their tongues, I asked. Not yours yet, she said. A shape, lean, fast, storm stink. That is enough shape to hang a net on. Then she was past me, westbound into other people's smoke, and I was eastbound into mine. I did not watch her go. Watching is a kind of hope that wastes water. Evening Stamp waited at a squat tower called, without affection, the Nail. A sergeant with a burned ear checked my lips hard enough to hurt and seemed pleased by ordinary cracked red. He took the packet, replaced it with a thinner one, and said the Salt Road South had bandits again, the bored kind that rob because the land teaches no other trade. Travel with the Dawn Caravan if you like company. I do not like company, I said, polite. He shrugged, then die quiet if you die. We hate paperwork. I slept outside the Nail's wall in a ditch that held yesterday's shade like a secret. Laws ticked. Sip markers replayed behind my eyes. Shirin's shape net warning sat under them all. The chapter's work was no longer surviving a first lightning. The work was living inside clear sky without letting clear sky write my name in heat where charcoal men could read it. I touched the thinner packet and the wrapped nails and the place behind my heart. Ember steady, appetite leashed, feet ready. Tomorrow the Courier run would stop being only distance. Bandits or grey riders or both would turn the road into a weapon test whether I consented or not. Consent is a story. Preparation is a plan. I prepared by refusing a midnight sip of starless dark that offered nothing anyway, and by sleeping with my knife in my hand like a man who still remembered he had been only legs and fear before the sky knocked. Dawn at the Nail smelled of boiled grain and old smoke. I left before the sergeant with the burned ear could offer more advice about dying quiet. The thinner packet rode light. Light packets still get you killed if the road decides you look like coin. The Salt Road South ran pale between scrub shoulders, a chalk scar aimed at a distant smudge that would become another stamp if my legs held. Clear sky again. No cloud mercy. The hollow woke hungry and polite, which is the most dangerous mood a hunger owns. Polite hunger waits until you trust the morning. I sipped at the first basalt tooth. 2 heartbeats. Stop. Heavy enough for a fight, light enough for a long run if the fight did not come. Bandits, the sergeant had said. Bored kind. Bored men still own knives and good places to stand. They chose a pinch where the road dipped between 2 rubble banks. Classic. I saw the shape of the trap before I saw the men. Disturbed scrub, a cart half blocking as if broken, a mule that looked too calm. Calm mules in broken cart theatre are paid actors. I could have cut wide through thorns and lost half a morning. Grey riders combed east and west. Time was a second enemy. I kept the road and loosened the knife wrap and let the store sit ready behind my heart like a coal under ash. 3 men stepped out. 1 more stayed on the bank with a short bow. The lead had a face burned by ordinary sun and a smile burned by ordinary greed. Satchel, he said. Packet, coins, sandals if they fit. Live runner is cheaper than a dead one if you strip fast. I stopped at 20 paces. The bowman had a clean line. First Law whispered about aim and allies and how heat does not know friendship. There were no allies here, only accounting. I am late already, I said. Late posts earn stripes, dead ones earn replacements. You want the packet, you take the stripes when the next fort asks who taught you seals. The lead laughed. Seals buy wine if you know a clerk who drinks. He nodded at the bowman. The arrow left the string. I did not think poem thoughts. I released a needle of stored noon into the shaft's path and the air cracked like a dry stick. Fletching flashed to black lace. The arrow tumbled, slapped stone and died stupid. Heat shimmer hung a blink, then vanished. Silence landed harder than the shot. The bowman's mouth opened. The lead's smile cracked. One of the flankers stepped back into his own heel and sat down hard. Demon, someone whispered, and the word made my skin try to crawl off my bones because tavern demons die of exaggeration until someone decides to make the exaggeration true with ropes and priests. I am a late post, I said, and my voice sounded like dust. The next arrow buys you a black glass road and a story no clerk will enjoy writing. Walk away, keep your mule, Keep your boredom. Lose this morning. The lead wanted to be brave for his men. Bravery is expensive when the sky has already taken a side. He looked at the scorched arrow, at my mouth, at the clear lid of day above us. Then he spat, carefully not toward me, and jerked his chin. The bowmen lowered. The cart actors dragged their prop aside. I walked through the pinch with my face dull and my gut loud, and did not look back until the rubble banks fell behind. When I looked, they were gone into scrub like smoke with legs. Good. Witnesses who flee write fewer accurate tablets than witnesses who stand and count your teeth. I ran. The store had dropped. Needles cost. I wanted to tilt my face up and drink the whole vicious noon in one long insult to second law. I did not. At a safe bend, I took 2 heartbeats, then 2 more after 100 counts, rebuilding to heavy safe without copper. Sweat ran into my eyes and tasted like coin. My hands shook the way they shake after a knife fight you win by a finger width. Weapon test. That was the chapter's knife turning in the lock. Courier run was no longer only distance and stamps. The road had asked what I was, and I had answered with aim instead of a corpse. Answering has costs. Scorch is a signature. Signatures draw charcoal men. I kicked grit over a black freckle where a drip of release had kissed dirt near my sandal, then scuffed until the freckle looked like old camp trash. Pride wanted the arrow kept as trophy. I left it. Trophies talk. By midday, a caravan's dust rose ahead, the dawn group from the nail finally catching the road's slower truth. I could have joined them and borrowed their eyes and their chatter. I cut parallel through low scrub and passed them unseen, a ghost with seals. Company is a blanket. Blankets hide you and also tangle your feet when you need to run hot. At a dry well marked with a white handprint, I drank ordinary water until my ordinary stomach complained, then sat in knife-slice shade and took stock like a quartermaster who hated his own inventory. Stored heat, rebuilt, moderate high. Arrow story, loose in 4 mouths. Grey riders, still in the world. Lips cracked red, not black. Good. Temptation to erase the bandits permanently so mouths could not talk. Present, loud, refused. Third law held. I explained nothing to the well. The well explained nothing back. That is the best conversation on the high road. Afternoon light went copper on its own without my help. Low-angle glare off salt patches. I wrapped cloth across my brow and mouth and ran the last stretch to a low fort called South Margin, a place that looked like it had been built to lose arguments with wind. Gate watch squeezed my jaw, sniffed, waved me through with less theatre than the brown tooth. Maybe word had not climbed this far. Maybe they were simply tired. I delivered, stamped, took a night chit I would not use. Rostam would have told me to leave before grey ones arrived. Rostam was not here. His advice still was. Outside, clear sky cooled toward evening, without softening its stare. I looked up once, not to sip, only to measure. Hungry, endless, mine to portion if I stayed smarter than my appetite and faster than the stories already sprouting from a scorched arrow on a salt road pinch. I turned my back on the fort lamps and took the long arc toward open scrub, ember-banked, packet new, name still not fully locked into any net, not yet, not if dust and discipline kept their side of the bargain. Stories run faster than posts when fear pays the toll. I learned that before second dawn, at a goat hair tent camp where a woman sold sour milk and rumor by the ladle. She did not know my face. She knew a tale already. Fire arrow on the salt road, man who pointed his mouth and made the sky spit, bandits turning into monks overnight, swearing clean lives with dirty hands. I drank the milk, paid the copper, and said the high road invents demons when men lose fights to weather and shame. She shrugged. Invented or not, mixed-color riders paid her brother for the telling. Coin makes wings. I left with ordinary milk on my breath and extraordinary trouble in my schedule. The new packet wanted a western jog before the loop bent north again, a stupid bit of geography that walked me toward grey dust I had spent days avoiding. Orders do not care about your survival math. That is why captains stay behind tables. I sipped early, 2 and 2, building heavy safe while the air still held a little mercy. Clear sky climbed. I practiced stop more than sip, because the hollow had liked the arrow trick and wanted encore after encore. Encores write larger scorch. Larger scorch hires more brothers to sell tales. At a stone bridge hardly wider than a cart, I met a blue cloth messenger watering his horse. He looked at my satchel, my lips, my wrapped strap. "You hear about the switchback devil moving south?" he asked. Not friendly, not unfriendly, just busy with a world that had grown a new hazard category. "I hear songs," I said. "Songs lie," he grunted. "Temple Grey is not singing. They are mapping burn freckles like surveyors. If you see glass dirt, do not camp on it. They take that as confession." He mounted, then added, without kindness, "Run dull. Dull is a craft." After he left, I stood on the bridge and watched water that was mostly memory slide under stones. Mapping burn freckles, my scuffed freckle from yesterday, the black coin spot in a wash from a lifetime ago when lightning first knocked, the switchback where bandits had learned manners in Chapter 1, a chain of dark punctuation across the plateau, and me the only grammar that connected them if someone was smart. I was smart enough to be afraid. Afraid is useful when it sharpens, useless when it empties the gut and the mind together. I kept the store. I kept the knife. I changed my path off the obvious western jog onto a longer spine of rock where carts never went and hoof prints would look like goats if I stepped careful. Midday weapon drill was not optional now. I set myself a course. Sip at markers, release at thistles, stop at the first hint of copper, run with weight, drop and rise without letting heat kick into the throat. The body learned, the appetite learned slower. Once I pushed a release a finger too wide and a thistle patch went up in a short, ugly bloom that smelled like burned cooking oil. I smothered it with dirt, heart hammering, and waited on one knee until a shepherd on a far ridge turned away after deciding the flash was only sun on quartz. Close. Close is how charcoal men get maps. I whispered the laws until they tasted like blood and bread. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. Avoid bright throw. And a new working line I did not want. Do not teach strangers what a late post can do, unless the alternative is a hole in your lung. The bandits had owned a bow. The bow had owned an arrow. The arrow had owned my morning. I could have taken the cut through thorns. I had chosen the road and the needle. Choice is a seal you press on your own future. Afternoon brought the grey riders into clean view at last. Not rumor, not overhangs in the dark. 2 horses on the lower western track, mixed colors dull with dust. One man dismounted and crouched over something at the pinch where my arrow story had been born. Charcoal man, maybe, or just a tracker with temple pay and patience. The mounted one scanned ridges with a hand over his eyes. I was above them on the rock spine, prone behind a basalt lip, cloth over mouth, store banked deep. The hollow surged, erased them into black glass, it suggested, almost tender. No witnesses, no maps, clean road. Fifth Law's cousin spoke louder. Do not write larger scorch to hide smaller scorch while witnesses have fresh horses and a province full of brothers. I pressed my forehead to stone until the urge passed from command to suggestion to sulk. They found the arrow. I saw the mounted man hold shaft remnants up to the sun. Even black lace tells a tale if you know fire. He put it in a bag. Evidence is a seed. Seeds become warrants. They rode a spiral search, widening. One loop would climb toward my spine if I stayed. I backed along the ridge on elbows and knees, thorns in my palms, ordinary blood again, then slid into a cut that drained southeast toward a maze of dry washes. Goat thinking, hunted thinking, not demon thinking. Demon thinking ends on temple steps with a collar and a crowd. In the wash maze I ran soft, stopped often, listened. Once I heard hooves on stone far left. Once a voice bounced wrong off walls and seemed beside me when it was not. Fear does architecture tricks. I trusted feet and old path memory more than ears. Near evening I came out east of where I should have been, behind schedule, seals still snug, lungs raw. A village's dog barked at my smell. I skirted wide, bought nothing, left no face memory if I could help it. Dogs remember. People ask dogs questions only with kicks, which is a small mercy. Night camp was a ledge under an overhang that faced the wrong way for comfort and the right way for not showing fire. I needed no fire. I ate cold fish from a wrap and recited arrow stories I hoped would die. Demon, sky spit, mouth pointed. I replaced them with the story I would sell if caught. Bandits fought bandits. Someone dropped a torch. Runners taste fear and invent gods. Whether anyone would buy it depended on charcoal and coin and how many freckles they had already chained. I slept with knife in hand and ember low, a late post once more, carrying ordinary seals through a night that smelled faintly of oil and ash on a shifting wind. Hunted is not caught. Caught is a different section. I intended to postpone that section until the sky itself got tired of watching. Dry washes are the plateau's private script, written by water that left and never apologized. I read them with my feet. Before first light, I moved again, southeast, then east, letting the maze forget me the way mazes forget everything that does not bleed on their walls. My palms stung where thorns had fed. I rinsed them with a mouthful of skin water and bit back a sound when grit found the cuts. Quiet is a tool. Tools get kept clean. The packet's root scrap, if obeyed, wanted me northwest by now toward a stamp called Twin Stacks. Obeying was a noose. I aimed for Twin Stacks by a longer grammar, south fringe, then a hook north through sheep country, where mixed-color horses would look expensive and obvious. Clear sky arrived early, a pale violence. I sipped at a bend where the wash walls cut wind and witnesses. 2 heartbeats, hold, run, 2 more at a litter of pale stones, heavy safe by the time I climbed out onto open scrub with the sun still mean but not yet nail white. A shepherd woman with a face like folded leather watched me rise from the earth as if men did that on Tuesdays. Lost the road, I said. Storm paths. She pointed with a stick toward a smudge of towers. Twin Stacks if you have legs. Grey men if you have sins. I asked which road the grey men liked. The one with ruts, she said, and spat. Take the one with thorns. I took thorns. By mid-morning the hollow pressed for a wider drink. Clear noon was building, the hungry kind that makes the air ring if you listen wrong. I gave it 3 heartbeats at a salt-veined scar and felt the scrape sanded smoother by practice. Stopping still hurt in the will. The will held. Copper stayed out. I whispered thanks to no god and to Rostam's unfriendly mercy and to Shirin's dates which were long gone but still worked as a memory of ordinary sweetness. Weapon test continues, I told the quiet. Not only bandits. The test is whether I can carry day as a blade and still arrive as male. Twin Stacks showed itself near noon. 2 brick teeth and a wall that had been repaired by men who hated brick. Signal mirror winked from the taller tooth. The hollow lifted. I looked at dirt until it settled. I scrubbed my lips with oil and grit until they bled honest red, then joined the rutted approach behind a fodder cart so the gate would see a runner among ordinary clutter. Watchmen were sharper here. Orders on a nail. All runners checked for mouth burn and forge stink. A man with temple grey at his shoulder stood not quite in command and not quite as guest. The political temperature of cooperation without friendship. He watched jaws get squeezed. When mine came, he leaned in and sniffed like a hound taught manners too late. Wind and salt, I said. He held my gaze. Salt does not scorch arrows. His voice was mild. Mild is a sheath. I do not carry arrows, I said. I carry seals. May I deliver them before they sweat? A beat, 2. The gate sergeant wanted his yard moving. Carts backed up. Boredom and schedule, my old allies, cleared their throats. The grey man stepped aside with a smile that stored me on a shelf. Deliver, then wait. Questions after water. Waiting is how nets close. I delivered to a clerk who smelled of onions and fear, took the next packet without hearing half his root speech, and asked where the latrine trench lay, as if my body had simple needs. It did. It also had a need to not be on a bench under grey eyes when the shelf decided to become a hook. Latrine path ran along the outer wall. At the corner where refuse carts exited, a gap wore the memory of many lazy violations. I became lazy. I became refuse. I walked out with a broken basket on my shoulder, borrowed from a stack, head down, just another dirty back in a fort that produced dirty backs by the dozen. Behind me, someone shouted about a runner who should wait. Shouts are not ropes. I was already in scrub. Basket dropped, legs honest, packet slamming my hip. Alarm horns do not always blow. Pride sometimes keeps forts from admitting a late post walked out of their fingers, or the grey man let me run to watch the direction. Either way, dust behind me stayed empty for a league, and empty dust is the only love poem the high road knows. I did not take the official North Road. I took sheep tracks toward a line of low hills where afternoon shadow would come early. Sipped once in a hollow, small, repairing what fear had burned off in sweat. No release. Release was a language I would not speak within sight of Twin Stacks' mirror. Near the hills I found sign of the grey riders again. 2 horses, fresher, cutting to intercept the official road I had not taken. Good. They were logical. Logic is a blade you can step beside if you are willing to bleed on thorns instead. In the first hill crease, I stopped and shook. Not elegant, not legendary, just a man with a second stomach and a first terror, hands on knees, laughing once because the alternative was to vomit dates he no longer carried. The hollow rolled, offering heat like comfort. I refused comfort that smoked. I drank water. I counted laws. I named myself Ardash, runner, paid in dust bread, still alive, still uncollared. Then I ran again, because naming only matters if the feet agree. Evening painted the hills copper and rose. I camped high, where wind erased scent and approach angles favored a knife. Below, on the rutted road, a small dust knot moved and stopped and moved. Search pattern. Oil and ash faint on a shift of air. I banked the ember until it was almost a secret from my own nerves. Sleep came in scraps. Between scraps, I planned the next sip markers, the next lies, the next time I would choose thorns over ruts without waiting for a mild voice to shelf me. The Courier run had become a weapon test, yes. It had also become a hunt geometry problem. I was still bad at being prey. I was learning. Learning keeps the name off ash reports one night longer, and one night longer is how late posts outlast empires that think they own the noon. Sheep country smells of lanolin, dust, and the patience of animals that expect to be eaten by something eventually. I crossed it like a man hoping not to be the something and not to be the meal. The hills held me through morning. Below, on the rutted ribbon, search dust came and went. Twice I saw mixed colors flash when sun caught a sleeve. Twice I stayed belly down until the flash became distance. The packet dug into my hip hard enough to leave a bruise shaped like duty. I sipped at a crest where only hawks argued. 2 heartbeats. The clear sky tasted washed and sharp. After storm sharpness without the storm, as if the day had scrubbed its knife overnight. Texture notes mattered. I was becoming a glutton with a ledger, which is either wisdom or a prettier doom. A boy with a crook watched me from a stone pen. You running from tax or wife, he called. From lateness, I said. He accepted that. Lateness is a local god. I paid him a copper to say, if asked, that a burned-mouth man went west at a limp. I went east at a run. Cheap misdirection. Maybe enough to split a pair. Grey riders were still 2 bodies last I counted. 2 bodies can become 10 when tablets move. Midday turned the hills into ovens. I dropped into a crease, built the store to heavy safe in measured threads, and drilled aim on a line of sheep dung dry enough to blacken without much smoke. Ugly targets, honest feedback. Wind lived differently between hills than on open road. I learned the new math until needles went where eyes pointed. The hollow wanted wider, always wider. I gave it 100 empty counts and the memory of a thistle bloom that nearly hired a shepherd as witness. Appetite calmed to a low boil. Low boil I can carry. Afternoon brought a problem shaped like kindness. An old drover's mule had gone down in a cut with a pack spilled, grain sack splitting, the man hauling with a back that had already spent its best years. He saw me and did not ask what I was. He asked for a shoulder. First law stood up in my throat. Heat does not know friendship. Ally is a big word. Stranger with a mule is still a living body near any mistake I might make if grey riders topped the ridge mid-help. I banked the ember deep, deeper than comfort, until I felt almost only ordinary tired. Then I put my shoulder under the pack frame and lifted with legs and breath. Grain dust coated my teeth. The mule complained in mule language. We got the load onto a flat, and the drover's eyes went wet with a gratitude that made me look away. "Drink," he said, offering a skin. I drank. Ordinary water, ordinary thanks. He asked my name. I gave him a common one that was not mine. Third law's cousin. Never explain, and sometimes never fully name. He told me grey men had questioned his camp at dawn about glassed dirt and scorched fletching. I told him glassed dirt sounded like lightning lies. He nodded, uninterested in empire puzzles, interested in grain. I left him with his mule and took a line that put hills between my back and his gratitude. Kindness is a scent. I did not want it trailing me into the next ambush. Near evening, the hills lowered into a plain dotted with thorn and the distant brown of a waypost. Official road rejoined my imperfect path like a river taking back a creek. Tracks showed many horses now, not only two. Coordination thickening. Temple grey and garrison dust braided. Money moving. Smoke becoming policy. I did not enter the waypost. I watched from scrub as a clerk nailed a fresh scrap to a board. Even at distance, I could read the posture of men who stopped to look. Interest, fear, joke, spit. Bounty talk has a posture. I had seen it before in Vahram's hinterland. Now it had walked east onto my loop. Night took the plain. I moved after full dark, empty gut under cloudless stars that fed me nothing useful. Fourth law practice. Starvation does not end me. Feet, knife, path memory. The hollow complained. I let it. Complaint is not command. At a dry ford, I found a fisher girl asleep beside a reed trap. I left a copper on a stone and did not wake her to buy lies. Some nights you spend coin on silence you do not even arrange. Superstition. Runners collect those too. I slept short under a lip of dirt where scorpions held prior claim. One crawled over my wrap and decided I was not food. Mutual. Between scraps of sleep, I rehearsed the waypost board in my mind. Bounty posture. Men reading, men spitting. Somewhere a charcoal tracing chained freckles toward a lean runner with satchel scars. The chain was not around my neck yet. Chains start as stories and end as iron. I intended to starve the middle. Dawn would force choices. Stamp late and risk the shelf again, or skip a stamp and become the other kind of criminal. The boring kind that clerks understand and whip. Whips are better than collars. Collars are better than ash. I preferred stamps on time and a face too dull to shelf. Preference is not prophecy. I rose while the east was only a rumor of light and ran a silent loop to check approaches. No horses in the near dark. No oil smell. Only plateau cold and the tick of cooling stone. Good enough. I sipped nothing yet. Empty gut for the last star hour. Fourth law kept warm like a coal under ash. When the first true gold touched the plain, I took 2 heartbeats and felt the hollow settle into working weight. A hair broke from scrub, and I almost released from pure startle. Almost is a grave. I locked the stop with teeth clenched and watched the hair become distance. Aim under surprise is the exam the bandit arrow had only introduced. Sheep country graded me gently. The next examiner might not. I tightened the satchel, felt the ember answer a knuckle tap, and faced the hungry, clear sky as it opened its market again. Buy only what you can carry under law. Leave the rest on the white table of noon. Run. Behind me, hills kept my shape a little longer in their creases, then forgot, the way land forgets all temporary fires unless men with charcoal arrive to teach it memory. I ran to stay unteachable one more day. The waypost plain widened. I put my dull face on like a second strap, felt the ember tick once, and stepped from scrub toward the day's next hungry market of clear sky. The waypost crouched on the plain like a crate someone forgot to claim. Timber, mud patching, a well with a squealing crank, and a board where empire nailed its moods for travelers to read and fear. I approached in the middle of a 3-cart clump, head down, satchel plain, lips scrubbed. Gate was a gap in a thorn abatis watched by a man who cared more about chickens escaping than runners arriving. Good. I love underfunded attention. Inside, the board held 3 scraps, one about fodder prices, one about a lost mule with a branded shoulder, one written in a better hand, reward for proven sightings of unclean road fire, burn-mouthed couriers, glassed earth, report to mixed authority riders, silver on proof, favor on capture, do not approach alone if flame is seen, proof, capture, flame. Words like hooks. I did not stare long enough to become a man who stares. I bought watered beer I would not finish, stood near men who argued about the mule, and listened with my shoulders. A carter said the Salt Road Bandits had found religion after a demon spat on their arrow. A soldier said demons were bandits with better theatre. A woman mending harness said Temple Grey paid her cousin for a black stick that used to be fletching. Coin makes wings. Wings make nets. I left half the beer, stamped my packet with a bored clerk who did not squeeze my jaw, and walked out before gratitude for that mercy could show on my face. Behind me, someone laughed that the bounty would only feed liars. Liars and one truth, I thought, and kept the thought off my mouth. Clear sky stood over the plain without a chaperone cloud. I took the north track as the scrap ordered, then bent east after the first fold of land hid me from the waypost roof. Sip at a leaning stone, 2 heartbeats, stop. The hollow accepted noon rope smoother each day. That smoothness scared me more than the scrape had. What becomes easy becomes automatic. Automatic is how overfill sneaks in wearing the mask of skill. I drilled the stop, sip, stop, until stopping felt like the main act and sipping the servant. A hawk turned overhead as if bored. I envied wings and distrusted the envy. Wings are visible. Near noon, I found glassed earth for real, not mine. A patch the size of a shield, black smooth, recent enough that dust had not yet claimed it. Not my needlework, wider, angrier, or older and re-exposed by wind. Either way, charcoal men would kiss it and call it scripture. I did not step on it. I did not scuff it. I marked its place in my head and left a wide arc, because some traps are not set by living hands. Some traps are simply places where attention will pool. A rider came from the north alone, not grey, just dusty, a private courier with richer leather than mine. He slowed. "You the one they want?" he asked, half joking. "I am the one who is late," I said. He grinned, then sobered. "Keep off the mirror forts. They are checking mouths like horse teeth." He rode on. Kindness from strangers was becoming a weather pattern. I did not trust weather, but I used it. Afternoon put heat knives through my wrap. I rebuilt the store in threads, heavy safe, and practiced release only once, a finger into the shadow side of a boulder. Black freckle, immediately dirt-dressed, no bloom, no trophy. The bandit arrow still lived in my nerves. Every release now carried a courtroom on its back. In a dry creek, I met a runner coming south, not Shirin, a thin man with a cough and eyes that had seen too many night camps. He shared the road's new catechism without greeting. Twin stacks lost a runner out the latrine path, grey man furious. Fort captain embarrassed. Extra riders called from the west road. Description tightening. Lean, short black hair, courier leather, satchel mended with wrapped nails, smell of forge after sun. My silhouette had grown denser. Nets love density. I coughed back as if I shared his sickness, mumbled thanks, and split at the next fork without offering my name. Names are handles. Handles swing doors. By evening, a fort with a real gate rose ahead, not twin stacks, a place called Red Ditch for a trench that ran rust-colored after rains. I had a stamp due there. Skipping would whip. Entering might shelf. I scrubbed lips raw, rubbed horse dung smoke from a wayside fire into my tunic to confuse forge nose, and joined a line behind two merchants arguing insurance. The watchman squeezed, frowned, sniffed. Dung and road, I offered. He looked disgusted enough to believe me and shoved me through. Inside, a grey sleeve leaned on a post and watched faces. I became tired shoulders and thirsty throat, collected my stamp in the clerk's shade, and asked nothing, answered nothing, left with the next packet while the grey sleeve tracked someone louder than me, a drunk soldier confessing jokes about firemen. Loud men make excellent lightning rods. I blessed his stupidity without slowing. Outside Red Ditch, I ran until the walls shrank to toys, then to marks, then to memory. Only then did I sip, 2 heartbeats, a reward that was also fuel. The hungry clear sky took my small theft without comment. Sky does not comment, people do. People with charcoal and silver. Night camp in a thorn bowl. Laws recited, board text replayed, description tightening like a wet leather strap drying into shape. I touched wrapped nails and wondered if I should tear the strap down to bare leather and lose the iron song forever. Storms were rare, searchers were not. I kept the wrap and the nails and the honesty of a mended life. Becoming someone else entirely is also a way to die. Sleep came. Dreams came with boards and hooks and arrows turning to black lace in midair. I woke once to hoofbeats far off, waited until they faded, and slept again with knife in hand, still Ardash, still uncaught, still learning that a courier run becomes a weapon test, not at the moment of the needle, but at every hour after, when the story tries to catch the hand that wrote it in heat. Mirror forts flash like coins held to the sun, useful for empire, poison for men who store day in a gut and cannot afford to be seen flinching at light. The route scrap after Red Ditch loved mirrors, 3 signal towers in a chain, each winking state mood across leagues. My working note under the 5th law woke fully and demanded a number. 6th law, then, clean enough at last. Do not linger where mirrors and polished bronze can throw your release, your face, or your fear into other men's eyes. Fight in dust, scrub, and matte stone when choice exists. Choice existed if I paid in hours. I left the official chain and took a long southern sag through broken country where towers saw only ridges. The packet would arrive late. Late is stripes. Stripes are not collars. I could wear stripes. Morning sip in a bowl of matte rock. 2. 2 more, heavy safe. No test release within any line of sight that might hold a polished thing. Discipline tasted like chewing leather. I chewed. A column of garrison infantry crawled the official road north of me, blue scraps at spears, a cart of poles and bronze dishes that made my hollow hum with stupid interest. Polished gear is a choir. I put a ridge between us and hummed nothing back. Schedules and boredom had saved me before. Today, distance would have to do their job. At a salt pan edge, I saw my own face dimly in a brine film and hated it. Not the cracked lips, the eyes, too awake, too much sky inside. I muddied water across my cheeks until I looked like any runner losing a fight with dust, then moved on before the pan could become a mirror story. Midday weapon test came without bandits. It came as thirst, heat, and a wrong turn into a cul-de-sac of thorn that cost me half an hour and a strip of skin. Anger flared. Anger wants wide release. I stood still and released nothing, only breath, until anger shrank to information. You are tired. You are hunted. You are not owed a clean path. Then I backed out, blood on thorns, ordinary again. Clear noon on the pan's far side was a white tyranny. I sipped 4 heartbeats because the store had burned down through sweat and fear, and for a few seconds copper tinted the world. Edge. I stopped, kneeled, rode the nausea, and hated how close skill sat next to gluttony. The difference was a count. Counts are thin walls. I stacked them anyway. Afternoon put me parallel to the second mirror tower at a league's safe remove. I watched it wink, wink, wink toward the third. Messages about fodder, about riders, about me if density had become enough. I could not read flashes. I did not need to. I needed to be elsewhere when men who could read them mounted. In a ravine I found Shirin's boot print, or a limp that matched, the drag side marking dust. Fresh. She had passed north to south on some hard errand. I did not follow. Parallel lives on the road touch and part. I left 2 dates on a stone in the print's path in case she doubled back. A stupid soft act. Then took them back because dates on stones tell trackers someone kind and foolish had paused. Softness is expensive under hunt geometry. I ate the dates myself and called it fuel. Near evening, the third tower's flash still found a high cloud edge and threw a pale coin across my ridge. Even sky becomes bronze when Empire wants it. I dropped into shade and waited out the angle, counting laws to keep from sipping just to feel armed. Armed is not the same as safe. Safe is a story parents tell. Armed and unseen is the adult version. I camped without sight of any wink. Matte country, thorn, stone. A fox watched me from a ledge and decided I was neither rival nor carcass. High praise. Night brought cold and stars and an empty hollow that sulked through fourth law drills. Knife forms in the dark, quiet footwork, breath counts. If they took my noon, they would not take my older self without paying. I slept on that promise and woke with it still in my mouth like blood. Dawn route decision. Rejoin the official chain for the next stamp at a place called Low Mirror, or skip and accept the whip later with a story about washouts and sickness. Low Mirror's name was a warning label. I skipped. I cut toward a lesser post with no polished toys, only clay and tired men, a place maps forgot until tax day. On the way, I practiced the new 6th law aloud until it rode with the others. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. No mirrors when hot. The rhythm held. Rhythm is how laws survive panic. A private fear walked with me, that avoidance itself was a signature. Men who never stand under mirrors, while every other runner does, become interesting by negative space. Interesting is hunted. I could not solve that fear on one morning. I could only refuse to gift a signal tower my flinch. At a scrub flat, I met the grey riders' work without meeting the riders. A camp break, 2 horse dung piles, a scrap of charcoal sketch under a rock weighted carelessly. I should not have looked. I looked. Lines of road, marks at switchback, salt pinch, twin stacks, red ditch, a question mark near sheep hills, my life as a dotted hunt. I burned nothing. Fire would confirm. I folded the scrap into my wrap to deny them their map, then hated the theft because theft of temple property is a different warrant, then kept it anyway. Let them redraw. Redrawing costs time. Time is legs. I ran with their map against my ribs like a second packet, seals of a darker kind, and did not look back at the ridge where Low Mirror would be winking at men who still believed light was only for messages and never for prey. I promised the stolen scrap a grave in deep scrub before Ash Spur. Tools need retirement plans. Noonlight still tried to sell me the whole day. I bought 2 heartbeats and walked away. Walking away is the skill under the skill. By late day, my legs shook with the Southern Sag's tax. I accepted the shake and entered Harrowstack country, ready to trade lateness for leather, if leather still meant I was only a late post in tired men's eyes. The lesser post was called Harrowstack by people who hated it, and home by no one. Clay walls, no mirror, a gate sergeant with a whip already in his hand because lateness is a religion there, and he was its priest. I arrived near second noon, dust grey, Packet sweat dark, lips honest red. He did not ask about demons, he asked about time. I gave him washout, thorn cut, sick mule traffic, the essay runner's right. He smiled as if he had written it himself years ago, then gave me 3 stripes across the shoulders with a practiced wrist. Pain is information. Information said, you still pass as ordinary enough to punish with leather instead of doctrine. I bit leather straps and did not release heat into the man, the post, or the stupid sky. First law and third law held hands on my back and kept me human. He tossed me water after. Drink. Next packet goes to Ash Spur by dusk tomorrow. No essays. I drank, I took the packet, I said yes, captain, though he was no captain, because yes is oil on small gears. A medic who was mostly a man with rags glanced at my shoulders and at my mouth. Forge stink, he muttered. I told him dung smoke and shame. He snorted, smeared salve that burned worse than the whip, and told me Temple Grey had left orders on a nail, even here. Check mouths, hold interesting ones. I asked if I looked interesting. He looked at my eyes too long. You look tired, he said. Tired lives. Stay tired. I left Harrowstack with Stripes singing and the Hollow furious that I had let Leather write on us without reply. Fury is a poor quartermaster. I walked until walls shrank, then ran, then sipped 2 careful heartbeats in a ditch, rebuilding not for pride but because Ash Spur was a full day and hunted hours burn fuel. Clear Sky watched. I watched back through slitted eyes and refused the urge to drink until the stripes stopped hurting. Pain and appetite braid if you let them. I unbraided them with counts. Mid-afternoon put a caravan in my path, stopped dead, guards shouting. Bandits ahead in a proper little camp across the road. Not theatre this time. Cooking smoke bowled as a tax. The merchants wanted a runner to turn around and carry their panic to Harrowstack. I was already late in my bones. I was also a courier whose run had become a weapon test, whether I liked the curriculum or not. I told them to hold and walked forward alone along the verge until a bandit sentry saw me and whistled. 5 men, 1 woman with a spear, a string of stolen mules, eyes that measured satchels. Road tax, the spearwoman called, or blood tax, choose. I am empty of coin and full of mail, I said. Mail burns poorly and brings forts, she smiled. Forts are slow, grey riders are not, I said, and watched that land. Even thieves had heard of mixed colours and silver for fireproof. Uncertainty moved in her shoulders. I did not show flame, not first. I showed the charcoal map scrap like a seal of doom, close enough for her to see road marks and the hunt dotted toward places with names. They are mapping berms, I said. You want to be a freckle on their scripture, or you want to move your kitchen off this road and rob someone who is not carrying Empire's eyes behind him. A man near the pot spat. Tricks. Then try me, I said, and let a thread of noon show at my tongue tip, a glow no larger than a coal's kiss, then swallowed it back before bloom. Third law groaned. Necessary exception, I told it. Exceptions are how laws die if you stack them. I stacked one anyway. The spearwoman's eyes went wide, then narrow. Not demon enough to fight for free, demon enough to make silver men come running. She jerked the spear. Break camp, leave the runner. If he lies, the road will kill him without our help. They moved faster than bandits are supposed to move when pride is involved. Fear of grey silver outran pride. Smoke died, mules complained. In a quarter hour, the road was only ruts and a grease stain where a pot had sat. I walked back to the caravan and told them the way was clear and I had used harsh language. They wanted details. I gave none. They offered coin. I took 2 coppers because refusing payment is also interesting, then jogged on before gratitude could become questions. Stripes on my back, map scrap against my ribs, ember steady, story denser. Every solution planted seeds. I needed a stretch of hours where I solved nothing but distance. Evening cooled the whip welts into a stiff jacket under my tunic. I camped early in a place with bad angles for horses and good angles for regret, recited laws, added a note I hated. A shown coal buys roads and sells silhouettes. Use rarer than needles. Needles already cost too much. Sleep was a shallow pond. In it, Vahram's almost smile floated, and Rostam oiling a spear, and Shirin's grin, and the grey man's mild shelf eyes at twin stacks. I woke to a real sound, one horse, not two, picking through scrub with care. I became stone, ember banked to near death, knife out. The rider passed 30 paces downhill, a silhouette with a bag at the saddle that might have held arrow lace and charcoal sticks. Alone, split search. He paused, sniffed wind, and for a heart-stopping stretch looked uphill straight at my thorn clump. Then a night bird yelled, and he decided birds were better company and rode on. After the dark closed, I did not smile. Close is a teacher that charges high fees. I moved camp a league by feel, leaving the almost grave behind, and finished the night under a different thorn, shoulders burning, laws ticking, clear sky somewhere above the dark, promising noon like a blade left on a table for anyone brave or stupid enough to pick it up by the edge. Before true sleep, I touched the welts through cloth and named them lucky. Lucky is a bitter spice. It means the world still sorts you into the category that gets whipped instead of dissected. Category borders move. Grey-silver moves them faster. I would reach Ash Spur on time if legs held, deliver like water, leave like smoke, and keep the coal behind my teeth where only law could open the door. The single rider's path stayed in my ear like a song sung wrong. Split searches mean more men, more angles, more mild voices with shelves for live runners. I adjusted tomorrow's sit markers in my head. Earlier fuel, no shown coal. Needles only if lungs were next. Sixth law, absolute near any glint. Then I slept, knife in hand, partner with teeth quiet for once, a late post wearing leather scripture on his back and refusing to write back in fire. Ash Spur took its name from an old burn on the hillside, a black tongue of ground where some forgotten fire had eaten scrub and left a scar the color of temple talk. I saw it first as a dark smear under hungry clear sky, then as a fought tooth, then as a problem with a gate. I buried the charcoal map scrap in deep scrub a league out, under a stone that looked like every other stone. Retirement plan honored. Theft's evidence returned to dirt. If they redrew without my help. Shoulders stiff under salve and cloth. I sipped early and often in small threads, building heavy safe without flirting with copper. The day's texture was dusty noon, draggy, thick, like swallowing warm rope. I took less per sip and more sips total. Ledger logic, gluttony wearing accountant clothes. A goat track put me above the approach road for a look. 2 horses with mixed color kits stood in the fort's outer shade already. Grey had beaten me here or lived here now. Mild voices, shelves, mouth checks. My description dense enough to hang a net on. Options stacked. Enter and hope dung smoke and stripes made me dull. Skip and become a deserter of stamps with a packet that would hang me as surely as doctrine. Wait for night and try refuse tricks again. Twin stacks had burned that trick for this region. I chose a 4th path, become someone else's delivery. On the lower road, a muleteer struggled with a cracked wheel and a load of clay jars. I helped for half an hour like a man who needed coin, spoke little, gave the false common name, and earned a place walking the mule's far side under a hat that was not mine. At the gate the watch saw jars, mule, muleteer, and a dusty helper with his head down. Grey eyes flicked. Jaw squeezes targeted men alone with satchels. My satchel rode under a grain sack for 20 critical paces until the yard clutter took us. I peeled off toward the clerk shed with the packet already in hand. Hat returned with a nod and became a runner mid-yard as if I had always been one. The clerk took seals, cursed my lateness without passion, stamped and shoved a heavier return packet at me. Straight back west to Vahram's road by the long north arc. No scenic essays. Go. Grey sleeve turned in the yard. I was already moving toward the water jar, then the latrine corner, then a fodder stack, never quite open enough to shelf cleanly. A shout rose about checks. I stepped through a side wicket used for sheep when a drover cursed his flock into motion, and the flock's stink and dust became a moving wall. Outside, I ran bent until the black tongue of old ash hid me in its ugly sameness. Behind, a horn blew once, uncertain. Not full alarm, annoyance. Annoyance still grows legs. I took the North Arc early, wrong for the first hour on purpose, then corrected through a maze of low crests. Sip, stop, run. The heavier packet slammed a welt and made me hiss. Pain ordinary, good. Near midday, the true weapon test arrived, wearing garrison blue and temple grey together. 4 riders on the Arc Road, not a split pair, a proper catch team. They had a netter with a coil of rope and a man with a polished shield on his saddle that threw sun like a signal. 6th Law snarled. I was already off-road in scrub, but the shield swept light across ridges, looking for flinch and glare. I pressed face into dirt and let the store sit banked so deep I felt cold in my teeth. The hollow hated it. I hated it more. Light licked over my back and passed. Hooves climbed, paused, descended. Voices argued about latrine runners and sheep stink. Then they split 2 and 2. Classic comb. 1 pair angled toward my scrub. I moved on elbows into a shallow cut, then rose into a crouch run that put a crest between us. No release. Release would sing to the shield. Knife only if breath touched my neck. Feet first. Always feet first when sky is a liability. A crest later, I found a shepherd's stone hut, empty of people, full of old wool smell. I did not enter. Entering is waiting. Waiting is shelves. I used the hut's shadow angle to break line from the comb and ran the reverse slope toward a dry river road that maps showed and men hated because it went nowhere useful for carts. Nowhere useful is a kind of sanctuary. By afternoon, the catch team dust was a smear behind wrong hills. My lungs scraped. Welts screamed. I sipped in a hollow, 3 heartbeats, nearly 4, felt copper knock and stopped with a snarl at myself. Heavy safe rebuilt slower than fear burned it. That math ends in craters if ignored. I laughed once, short, ugly, and kept running. Evening brought the dry river's white stones and a wind that erased tracks with petty kindness. I camped under an undercut bank, packet for pillow, knife in hand, and recited the chapter's growing bill. Arrow story. Shown coal, stolen map, latrine ghost, sheep wall exit, catch team. Each item a bead on a string someone would eventually pull. Promise of the chapter still needed paying clean. Learn to sip sun at noon as craft. Let the Courier run become a weapon test and survive it without becoming only a weapon. I was halfway through the exam with ink on my hands. Stars hardened. Hollow empty. 4th Law warm. I slept in pieces and dreamed of polished shields throwing my face across a province until every clerk could trace me by glare alone. When I woke, I muddied my cheeks again before dawn, a small superstition against mirrors, and waited for the hungry clear sky to open so I could steal only what law allowed and spend it only when lungs left no other coin. I named the black tongue of ash as I left it behind. Old fire. New hunt. The land keeps both without taking sides. Men take sides. Men with ropes and shields and mild voices. I had slipped their yard again by sheep stink and timing, which is not a method you can publish in a manual. Methods that cannot be repeated safely are luck wearing work clothes. I did not lean on luck. I leaned on legs. The North Arc corrected under my feet, stone to scrub to stone. Each crest I checked dust, each hollow I checked wind for oil and ash. Once I caught a faint wrong smell and froze until it resolved into a dead animal and not a priest kit. Fear makes bad naturalists. I corrected the record and ran on with the heavier packet, teaching my welts new hymns. White stones under boots make a noise like teeth chattering. I hated it and used it anyway because trackers hate it too when wind moves grit across the riverbed in constant petty storms. Morning clear sky arrived hard and clean. I sipped at a bend where undercut banks made a private room of shade. 2 heartbeats. Wait, 2. Heavy safe target. Dusty texture dragged. I chewed the rope of noon and did not ask for softer weather. Weather does not take requests from late posts. The heavier packet wanted Vahram's road by the long North Arc. Vahram meant known yards. Rostam's spear oil almost smiles, and also the first place grey interest had matched garrison interest. Going home is not always safety. Sometimes home is where the net was first knotted. I ran the dry river until it bent toward a village with a bright wellhood. Sixth law turned me aside into scrub before polished metal could throw me to myself. Negative space signature be damned. I would solve interesting absence later, preferably never. At a limestone shelf, I drilled aim because the catch team's shield had taught me a new fear, light as hunter. Needles into dirt pockets, no bloom, stop, again. Wind in the river corridor, behaved like a snake in a tube. I missed, corrected, hit. Pride wanted a wider cut to prove the shield wrong. Pride was invited to sit down and drink nothing. Midday put a figure on the bank above me, not grey, not blue, a runner silhouette with a limp, Shireen. She skidded down in a spill of grit, grinned the thin grin, and did not hug because runners who hug on open stone are already writing songs. "You look whipped," she said. "I am," I said. "Leather and schedule. Grey is thick as flies on fruit," she said. Ash Spur sent a catch team. Twin Stacks wants a ghost with a satchel. Someone stole a charcoal map and made a priest spit blood in anger. Her eyes flicked to my face. "Tell me it was not you." I told her nothing. Third law. Her eyes narrowed with something like respect or despair. "Then keep being no one," she said. "I am carrying a quiet warning west for men who still think boring is possible. If you see Rostam, tell him the shrine scrubber remembers debts. If you see Vahram, do not see him long." She pressed 3 dates into my hand and took 2 of my coppers without asking. Balance as old as the road. Then she climbed the bank, limp sharper, and vanished into heat shimmer like a rumor with sore feet. I ate the dates slowly. Ordinary sweetness, camouflage and reason. Without ordinary, power is only appetite wearing boots. Afternoon weapon test did not ask permission. 2 of the catch team had guessed the dry river after all, or been taught by a local who hated runners. They came on horse down a ramp of packed silt, rope coil ready. Shield man lifting bronze to throw sun into my eyes. Blind flash. I dropped, rolled behind a boulder, vision splotched. The hollow surged, offering a wide answer that would glass half the riverbed and write my name in a scar visible from towers. Second law and sixth law, and every bead on my bill screamed. I released a needle low, not at men, at the silt ramp under the lead horse. Dirt cracked to black crust. Horse screamed, danced, dumped the rope man into white stones. Second horse shied from the heat smell. Shield flash went wide. I ran the corridor's inside curve where hooves slipped and sandals bit. Lungs raw. Packets slamming welts. A shout about demon. A shout about alive. Take him alive. Alive is a collar word. I cut up a side shoot of scree, hands tearing, and came out on the bank in thorn country that hated horses. Behind me, curses, a bowstring. Arrow hit stone by my calf and died ordinary. I did not scorch this one. Ordinary arrows are allowed to be ordinary. I ran until the river noise faded and my vision cleared of bronze ghosts. Store dropped hard from the needle and the panic sweat. I rebuilt under a mesquite shadow in tiny sips, counting, stopping, cursing, counting again. Copper stayed out by a finger's width of will. They would circle. They would call the other pair. Dry river was burned as sanctuary. I angled northwest toward broken hills that led, eventually, to the high road Vahram owned with his tea-colored eyes and knife-scarred table. Near evening, I found a caravanserai wall and did not enter. I watched from scrub as grey and blue both watered horses in the yard. More than 4 now, 6. Coordination had grown a spine. The bounty board's hooks were pulling real meat into the road. I camped rough, no fire, laws like beads through fingers. The needle under the horse had been aim under pressure. Courier run as weapon test paid in real coin. I had not killed, I had not bloomed. I had still thickened the story. Survival and secrecy were grinding against each other like molars. Night wind brought a snatch of talk from the road. Burned ramp, demon courier. Orders to hold forts' mouths, checks until the shape had a name. Shape. Not yet, Ardash. The gap was my country. I lived in gaps. Before sleep, I whispered the sip craft like a prayer I did not believe in gods to hear. Portion, stop, texture, landmark. No walk and drink, no brim, no mirror. The hollow listened or did not. Listening is not obedience. Obedience I enforced with scars on my shoulders and fear in my teeth. Dawn would demand another theft from the hungry clear sky and another stretch of road where feet mattered more than fire. I intended to pay both bills without declaring bankruptcy of the self that still answered to a clay tablet name and a dust-bred wage. After the shoot, I counted costs the way Vahram counted seals. Needle spent, story thickened, horses terrified, men alive, me alive. The column of those facts could be read as mercy or as unfinished work, depending on the reader. Temple readers prefer unfinished work that ends in collars. I preferred distance. White stones gave way to dirt that held prints again. I scuffed where I could and accepted where I could not. Perfect erasure is a myth sold to frightened clerks. Good enough erasure plus speed is the runner's religion. I practiced it until evening softened the edges of the world and the caravanserai lamps lit like small, stupid stars I refused to approach. Portion control is a dull phrase for the only art keeping me from becoming a crater with a legend attached. I woke under mesquite with the catch team still a bruise on memory and the clear sky already bleaching. Shoulders stiff, calf bruised where stone chips from the ordinary arrow had kissed. Packet seals intact, name still mine. I made the morning a school. Landmark sip at the mesquite itself. 2 heartbeats. Stop. Count 50. Check for copper. None. Good. Landmark sip at a leaning fence of a failed farm. 2. Stop. The hollow pressed for 4. I gave it 0 extra and ran a circle until the press eased, training the stomach in the same hour as training the legs. Landmark sip at a white scar of salt. 1 heartbeat only. Texture test. Dusty, draggy still. Thin reward. I logged it and moved on. A glutton takes any plate. A runner chooses terrain and hour. Between markers, I practiced stop as a flinch inverted. Flinch is automatic fear. Stop must become automatic wisdom. I opened my throat a finger, shut it, opened, shut, until the motion felt like latchwork on a satchel, not like romance with day. Release school came next in a pit where scrub walls hid bloom risk. Needles, finger widths, 1 deliberate near miss to study dirt scar, 1 full stop mid-urge when a lizard moved, and first law reminded me heat does not know friendship, even with reptiles. The lizard lived, my patience almost did not. Patience rebuilt with water and breath. By true noon, I attempted the chapter's core promise in clean form. Sip sun at noon as craft under hunt pressure. Store heavy safe. Run with it as a sealed weapon I might not draw. No bandits, no shields. Only the white nail and my count. 4 heartbeats. Rope, stretch, warm weight. Edge of copper like a distant symbol. Stop, hold, run. I ran a full league with the store even. No kick into throat, no tint, balance. The real sip of noon, not the light, the stopping, not the feast, the portion. When I finally slowed, sweat salt white on my wrap, I laughed without much sound because the hawk overhead looked offended by joy. Craft landed in the body. I could feel it as surely as the whip welts. Lightning had been accident and survival. Noon was choice and schedule. Weather on a leash if the leash held. Afternoon tested the leash. Cloud veil arrived thin, dimming the feast. The hollow sulked. I fed it nothing and made it wait, then took a smaller sip through veil to learn thin texture. Barely a meal. Good to know for future starved campaigns. Night chapter waited in some later life. Today was still day work. A farm woman at a wall offered shade and asked why my lips looked cooked. Wind and sun, I said. She nodded, uninterested, and complained about riders asking her to watch for forge stink men. I complained about taxes. We bored each other safely. Boredom is a craft too. I left her a copper for the shade and took a path that avoided her well's bright bucket. 6th law. She waved. I waved. Ordinary life held the door open, and I walked through without tracking blood on her threshold. Near evening, the highroad's true ribbon showed as a pale scar with fort smoke far west, Vahram's country beginning like a familiar smell. My chest did a stupid soft thing. I crushed it. Softness trails, softness shelves. I camped short of the last way stations, ate cold bread, and ran the laws with the new craft woven through. Portion is second law made daily. Stop is the law that keeps other laws possible. Aim is first law's hands. Silence is third law's mouth. Feet are fourth law's proof. Wrapped nails and matte ground are fifth and sixth. Together they are how a late post remains a late post while carrying day behind his heart. Sleep came easier than it had in days, not because danger lessened, but because skill is a kind of bed. I woke once to distant hooves on the official road and stayed stone until they passed, then slept again. Before dawn, I checked the packet seals by touch. Still honest. I would deliver to Vahram like water, leave like smoke if I could, and not mistake a tea-colored glance for a shield. Captain's inventory interesting tools. I preferred to remain a dull knife that somehow always arrived. The hungry, clear sky opened gold, then white. I stole 2 heartbeats at first light, banked them, and started the last stretches with portion control sitting in my nerves like a second spine. If the catch team found me now, they would find a man who could drink the day without becoming it. That was not invincibility. That was a better animal than the one who had crawled smoking out of a wash in a storm. I ran toward Vahram's road with the ember even and obedient, appetite leashed, craft earned, the courier weapon holstered and ready, and the bill of stories still unpaid in full behind me where grey silver bought wings for every arrow tail I had failed to kill cleanly. I pressure-tested portion control against memory of the shield flash and the horse scream. Could I have held stop if bronze had hit my eyes again today? I was not sure. Honesty matters in drills. I repeated stop latches under faster breath until my lungs burned and the latch still closed. Not certainty, better odds. Near full dark, I whispered the chapter promise like a seal pressed shut. Sip craft under noon. Courier run as weapon test, survive without becoming only weapon. The first 2 were inked into nerves. The third still walked beside me as a question with knives. I let the question walk. Questions keep men sharper than answers that flatter. If Vahram shelved me tomorrow, I would be a tool in a captain's chest. If Grey collared me, I would be doctrine's proof. If I ran well, I would remain a late post with an ember and a wage of dust bread. I knew which ending I was buying with each counted heartbeat of sky. I bought it again at first light, 2 heartbeats, stop, and put my feet on the road as if ordinary life still owned the lease. It did not, but it could collect rent a while longer in sweat and silence. The fort that had first fed me ash bread after lightning sat on its hill like a brown, stubborn fact. I approached at mid-morning with heavy packet, scrubbed lips, dung smoke memory washed off by river wind, stripes hidden under cloth, and a face trained toward boring. Gate watch had new orders nailed crooked, mouth checks, forge sniff, hold if interesting. The watchman who had once waved me through in storm stink now squeezed my jaw as if it owed him money. He frowned at honest cracked red, sniffed, waved me in with less certainty than I liked. Yard noise rushed, dice, smith, onion stew, ordinary empire machinery. A grey sleeve leaned near the well, not the Twin Stacks mild man, a different one with a charcoal stain on finger and eyes that inventoried. I became thirsty and tired and late, all true, and crossed to Vahram's door before inventory could become speech. Captain Vahram sat behind the knife-scarred table, tea eyes, grey temples, seals before souls. He took the packet, checked seals, locked 2, slit 1, read, grunted. You look leaner and meaner and late in new ways, he said. Explain the scenic route without poetry. Washouts, bandits, sick traffic, thorn country. I kept essays short, boring lives longer. He watched my mouth. Temple Grey is in my yard, he said. They want a courier shape that sounds like a man I send on long loops when smoke climbs roads. If that man stands in my office, he should decide quickly whether he is my runner or their proof. I am your runner, I said. Seals delivered. Next route when ordered. Almost smile. Almost. Then it died. Rostam left a spearhead wrapped for you and a message. Leave if you still can. I did not hear that message. Officially, I am telling you the North Short Run pays double because fools are scarce. Unofficially, my yard stinks of charcoal and rope. Yes, Captain. He tossed bread. Eat. You look cooked in the old way and the new. Do not make me regret paper. I ate ash-dense bread while heat paced behind my heart, caged, obedient for now. The grey man at the well would want conversation. Conversation is a leash. I left Vahram's office by the side that led toward the runner's shed, then cut behind the smithy where sparks flew ordinary and honest. Rostam was there, oiling nothing, waiting with a wrapped spear tip that was really a cloth of copper coins and a strip of dried meat. His eyes did not soften. Go out the fodder gate, now. They have your nail wrap in a sketch. Someone talked, bandits or clerks or both. Why still help, I asked. Because clean firemen make dirty years for everyone near smoke, he said, and because you still look like a late post when you remember to. Remember harder. I took the cloth, left the spear tip theatre, and moved. Foddergate, cart clutter, a shout behind that might have been my name or someone else's. I did not turn to learn which. Outside, the slope took my feet. I ran with double pay unearned and a captain's unofficial mercy burning hotter than stripes. Clear noon stood over the fort road. I should have waited for cover. I sipped 2 heartbeats while moving and nearly paid with copper tint on a turn. Stop. Lesson restated in nausea. Portion control under panic is the real exam. I knelt behind scrub, latched the stop, rebuilt even, then ran. A rider came from the gate, not grey, a garrison messenger on a fresh horse, eyes searching. He saw me, raised a hand, not yet a weapon. Orders to hold all lean runners, he called. Captain's yard. I pointed behind me as if the one he wanted was still on the slope and cut sideways into thorn while his horse fought the first bush line. Horses hate thorns. I loved them for it. By the time he cursed a path, I was in a cut that led toward the old switchback country where Chapter 1 had written freckles. Bad place for freckle men. Good place for men who knew goat braids. I took braids. Evening found me above the high road with the fort a toy behind and grey dust moving on the rutted approaches, like infection spreading. Vahram had bought me minutes with paper and almost smiles. Rostam had bought me copper and meat. Shirin's dates were memory sugar. None of it was a forever door. All of it was enough for one more night. I camped without fire, ate meat, drank carefully, and felt the ember sit even and ready. The Courier run's weapon test was not over. Catch teams would thicken. Charcoal would redraw. But the noon craft was mine now. Portioned, stopped, carried. Chapter promise mostly paid in the nerves. Cliff remained honest. Empire and Temple had braided into a hunt with my silhouette on the nail, and Ash Post waited in the 10-chapter spine as a fort captain problem of a harder kind. Tonight was only survival under clear sky that had fed me and marked me in equal measure. I touched my chest. Partner with teeth answered. Not master, not slave. I can work with that until the day work ends, and I intend that day to be far and chosen, and not a collar scene in a yard that smells of onion stew and rope. I put distance on like a second tunic. Copper from Rostam's cloth rode against my ribs beside seals. Double pay unearned would mean nothing if collars clicked. Earned minutes meant everything. I spent them on goat braids and matte ground, and the refusal to look back at tea-coloured eyes that had almost smiled and then chosen paper mercy over yard rope. At a high ledge, I risked one look. The fort was a brown toy. Dust knots moved on its approaches. Coordination had a home address now. I turned east of north, not the route of a man fleeing blind, the route of a man who still had a packet and a craft and a name he intended to keep off ash reports until he chose otherwise. The hollow asked for a wider drink to celebrate escape. I gave it 2 heartbeats and a hard stop. Celebrations smoke, smoke points. I ran quiet instead, stripes stiff, meat in my wrap, laws ticking, the chapter's weapon test still humming in the bones where a needle had kissed silt under a horse and a captain had pretended not to hear a message that saved my skin. At first light, the cloudless east turned the high road into hammered copper again. I ran with ordinary seals in a lighter packet taken from Rostam's copper cloth like a thief of logistics, and with an extraordinary gut trained now to sip, stop, and spend only under law. Behind me, Vahram's fort woke to arguments I would not attend. Ahead, the long country opened toward posts that did not yet own my silhouette, and toward one that would, in time, try to inventory me as a weapon. Ash post, name like a warning, waiting in the spine of the story like a tooth not yet bitten. Today's work was distance and proof to myself that noon craft survived panic's hangover. I sipped at the leaning marker, 2 heartbeats, stop, even weight, no copper. The hungry clear sky offered the whole white table. I took a portion and left the feast steaming. The stop felt less like refusing wine, more like setting down a cup because morning still needed hands. Progress, not purity, progress. A shepherd boy waved from a slope. Maybe the same who had sold goat songs, maybe another. He shouted that mixed-color men were offering more coin and talking about a dry river demon who melted roads under horses. I shouted that he should take their coin and sell them weather. He laughed. I hoped laughter lasted one more season. I did not visit the switchback. Pride wanted to spit on old freckles. Survival wanted bare dirt elsewhere. I cut a parallel grade and kicked no stones over dark patches because dark patches were now scripture in charcoal bags. Midday, I stopped on a saddle with clean sightlines and performed the craft in full view of no one. Sip to heavy safe, needle into a stone that would not care. Black mark, no bloom, stop, scuff, run. The sequence sat in muscle. Courier run had become weapon test, and I had not broken into only weapon. Knife still mattered, feet still mattered, lies still mattered. Sky was a tool with teeth, not a god and not a master. Afternoon brought a lone grey rider on a far ridge, scanning. I went belly to scrub and became geology until he moved on. Hunted is not caught. The phrase was wearing thin from use and still true. I let it be true one more hour, then another. Near a salt ford, I met the westbound runner with the cough. He saw me, flinched, then forced a grin. "You are a health hazard," he said. "Forts are spitting lean men out and collaring the ones who argue. Keep your mouth boring and your feet unfair." I gave him a strip of Rostam's meat because debt between runners is a rope, and sometimes you hold it. He took it, coughed blessing or curse, and went. I went opposite. Evening painted the plateau in copper and rose. I camped under an overhang that remembered my kind of sleep. No fire, knife-free, ember-banked, laws in step rhythm until dream. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. No mirrors when hot. Portion is daily second law. Shown coal is expensive. Needles under horses write stories. Stories grow wings when silver pays. I slept. Near midnight, hoofbeats moved on the road below. Unhurried, confident, more than 2 now. Voices low. Oil and ash, the comb continuing, thicker. They passed. I did not glow. I did not breathe heat. Stone among stones. After silence, I allowed no smile. Smiles are for bills paid in full. My bill was only current. Dawn again. Sip again. Run again. The plateau's old indifference read as cover. Indifferent land hides what it does not love. I was not loved by stone. Tolerated. Tolerance is shelter. My body catalogued costs. Lips cracked, sleep thin, shoulders striped, calf bruised, appetite for sky always half a thought from mutiny, overfill risk a constant neighbor, grey-silver a weather system, These were prices. I paid them the way I paid blisters, without drama, with attention. At high sun, I crested a rise and saw, far east, a brown smudge that might become ash post in a later chapter's mouth. Not today. Today ended on open road with craft in the nerves and hunt behind and beside. Promise paid. Lightning's child had learned noon. The Courier run had tested the weapon and left a man still able to choose stop. Cliff honest. Notice had become coordinated pursuit. Charcoal owned freckles. Captains balanced paper mercy against yard ropes. The sky itself remained a pantry and a snare. I adjusted the satchel strap, sinew honest, nail-wrapped, seals snug, and started the next stretch as if ordinary life still owned me. It did not, but it could watch me run a while longer, until the day I chose to teach the sky my name on purpose, and until Empire's pointing smoke found only empty road and the smell of rain where a storm-eater who had learned clear day had already passed. I ran. Behind my heart, the ember waited for the next honest noon, the next stupid ambush, the next priest who thought fire could be licensed, the next captain who thought men were tools with better branding. I would meet them on my schedule, if schedule held, with room left under the brim, with aim trained, with silence held like a second satchel no clerk could inventory. The hungry, clear sky stood open and endless. I drank my portion. I left the rest. I put my name in footsteps instead of scorch, and let the high road take the weight of a late post becoming weather that arrives exactly when it means to, not when collars click, not when silver sings, not when appetite lies and calls itself fate. Fate is a story. Portion is a practice. I practiced into the white afternoon until distance softened the hunt into haze, and the only sharp thing left was the count in my chest. 2 heartbeats, stop, run, alive, still Ardash, still unpaid in full by the world, still owing the world nothing but the next stamp and the next refusal to burn the table for a single meal. I whispered the kept promise to the open road like a seal pressed shut. Nooncraft learned, Courier run tested as weapon and survived with stop intact. Then I named the cliff without flinching. Grey-silver on the wing, charcoal scripture, fort yards with ropes, ash post somewhere ahead in the spine of days. The story would continue whether I slept or not. I slept in pieces anyway, knife in hand, ember banked, ready to be only footsteps when hooves returned.